Welcome to Flip Classroom. Today's lesson is the introduction to argument. Let's start in reverse and go over what is not an argument in essay writing. It's definitely not a verbal fight. And even though it's often confused with a pro-con debate, it is not a pro-con debate because that implies each side is evenly presented. And it is also not a case where there's a winner and a loser, because the goal is truth-seeking and persuasion. An argument is intended to persuade the audience to accept a position on a controversial issue. It requires justification. It is exploring two or more conflicting assertions. And you present an argument using rhetorical strategies. We'll go over those shortly. Why does an argument need justifications? Because when you're persuading, you should offer reasons. It's always the answer to because. And you support your reasons with evidence. It's a form of clarification that examines the reasons offered by both sides. Let's take a look at this really simple example. Imagine there's a 3-year-old child and she's working with her mother. So she asks her mother, "May I use the sharp knife?" And the mother says, "No." She adds justification. As a typical child would say, "Why not?" "No, because knives are sharp and dangerous." The mother clarifies her explanation. She gives justification for why the child cannot use the knife. Keep in mind that argument is a process with a product. It's not about being I'm right, I'm wrong, you're wrong. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. It's about finding truth. It's about finding the best solution to a problem. And that solution is your product. And we present it in the form of an essay. When you're presenting evidence in your justification to get to that product, there are 3 main types of appeals: ethos, logos, and pathos. These are called rhetorical strategies. Let's take a look at the first rhetorical strategy is logic. That is where you have clear reasoning. It makes sense. For example, the mother explains logically to her 3-year-old that using the knife would be dangerous because it's sharp. Logic demonstrates your claim. Your claim is your argument. It'll be your thesis statement. Logos relies on facts, statistics, very specific examples. Let's take an example of this. Imagine there's 65-year-old drunk Davy and sweet 16 Susie. They both need a liver transplant, but there's only one liver available. Using logic, who should get the liver? Well, most people would argue logically that Susie should get the transplant because the facts show she's younger, she's going to live longer, her track record shows that she's not going to ruin the organ, and her parents can pay for it. Those 3 facts lead you to believe that Susie is more qualified to get the liver than drunken Davy. Let's look at ethos. That is ethics. That is when you're basing your judgment on the claimant's character. Is the person presenting the evidence fair and reasonable? Do you agree with his or her values and belief system? Is that person qualified to be an expert? Has the credentials? And this person or evidence will build trust with the audience. We're going to go back to the example of drunken Davy and sweet 16 Susie. Let's take 2 people that are presenting evidence. The first is Father James. He's a religious figure. He's known drunken Davy since childhood. And Father James has personally witnessed drunken Davy's devotion to helping others. This religious community leader has seen drunken Davy spend so much time helping the poor that's why he's getting drunk, because he's relieving tension. And our second expert would be Surgeon Steve. Surgeon Steve explored Susie's medical records and determined that her blood type would reject the new liver. Based on these two experts in their field, what conclusion would you draw? Most of you would say Drunken Davy should get the liver. He's basically a good person, and Susie, her body's going to reject that organ. The organ is not going to successfully extend her quality of life. Now let's go to pathos. Pathos is emotions. It's based on feelings. Positive feelings, happiness, laughter, negative feelings, fear, anger, hatred. Let's apply this again to the same situation with Drunken Davy and Sweet Susie. Davy has a small son. And if Davy doesn't get that new liver, his small son is going to be fatherless. Okay? I'm appealing to your emotions. And Susie? Oh, she's cruel to kids. She sees little kids and she spits at them. They even smile at her. She gives them a frown. Based on these emotions, who deserves the liver? Well, Drunken Davy, of course, because he's such a kind, sweet person, and Susie's such a cruel person. So going back to the three types of evidence, going back to the three rhetorical strategies. Ethos, an expert, someone we believe, credible information. Logos, it makes sense, it's logical. Or pathos. Depending on which strategy you used, you could come to a different conclusion. You could conclude from logos that Susie should get the liver, from ethos that Davy should get the liver, and again Davy should get the liver based on pathos. So how do you know which strategy to use? The key is your audience. What are your audience expectations? Is it a group of scientists? Is it a small family gathering? To know what type of evidence and what strategy to use would work best. Generally speaking, if your assignment is a narrative essay, a story, you tend to use more pathos. In a research paper, you need experts. Your focus would be ethos. If it's an argument analysis, you'd possibly use more logos. But here's the trick. In many cases, in your writing assignments, you're going to use a combination of all three. You might focus a little more, you might emphasize a little more logos or a little more pathos or a little more ethos, but you tend to use all three. When writing an argument, there's various ways to structure it, but one of the most common structures is to begin with your introduction statement. It's to begin with your introduction paragraph that concludes with a thesis statement. Your thesis statement is your one-sentence claim, which you are trying to persuade your readers to agree with. Then you would divide your essay into sections. The first reason, the second reason, the third reason. There might even be 4, 5, 6 reasons, depending on the length of the essay. But the reasons, the body paragraphs, are where you have your evidence. In the reason, you explain what it is, and then have your examples. What makes an argument structure unique is it has an opposition section. That is where you describe what the other side would say in response to the thesis. It is the counter side. In that section, you would explain what the other side says, present their evidence, and include a rebuttal. The rebuttal is your perspective. It is your way of saying, I acknowledge there's another side, but my claim, my thesis, my perspective is better, more worthwhile, more practical because. Then you'd conclude with your conclusion paragraph, where you once again restate your thesis, include that universal truth, why this topic relates to everybody, is significant worldwide, global insight, what we can learn, and then your call to action. Your call to action assumes that you've already persuaded your audience, that everybody agrees with you, and you're telling them what to do. And it's an action, so in most cases you'll use a verb. You'll be telling your readers to write letters to the president, or call their members of Congress, or protest outside of City Hall, or demand justice is enacted. One of my favorite ones is to educate. You can always say to educate people on this issue. You can ask for a ban, you can ask for a change, but notice how these are all verbs telling your audience what to do now that they support your opinion. So in review, argument is persuading your audience to accept your position. Comes in the form of your thesis statement. It's essential to know who your audience is. That makes a difference. It'll also guide you towards which rhetorical strategy will be most effective for your audience. And end your essay strong. Empower your readers to take action and give them those verbs, give them those challenges to take forth. Thank you for joining me today in Flipped Classroom.